Chapter 34, Liberation. I and several other officers were let out of the transport shuttle in Orbital 1. I felt stronger that day, coughing less. I felt the pressure in my chest, but was still planted firmly upon my feet. We all split into our respective divisions, embarking on our various missions. My mission was to join the Deep Salvage team to Arcana. I wanted only to work, and in my endeavors see the face of Mediha and everyone, and be with her in my heart. I shook hands with those I became acquainted with over the past year of my Khoorhani experience. I headed for Bay 90, walking over the smooth metallic floor and gazing out of the windows at the giant crescent that was Bane below me. With each step, each breath, I held her, and did not stray. Suddenly I heard, "Corporal Khoorhani. Are you Corporal Khoorhani?" It was a tall man, and he was accompanied by another. I saluted. "Yes, sir. I've been ordered to bring you this way. I believe you have new orders." "New orders?" I replied. "I don't understand, sir. May I ask where, sir?" "Corporal, I do not have that info. You are to come with us," he said. And so I went. Media's name still resonating within me. I smiled again, looking out at Bane. She was beautiful to me. The red and black fleets were gathered in wait for the big attack, beautiful fireflies in the open void. The two men walked ahead of me as we made our way past Bay 10, then 9. I assumed they would stop, knowing that the lower bays were reserved for high-ranking officers so that they may easily access the dreadnought battleships. We walked beyond Bays 7 and 6, 5. "Sir, I'm with the salvage team," I reminded them, sure that they were mistaken. "We know who you are, Corporal. Relax," he said. "I tend to worry. I'm sorry," I said. We reached Bay 1. It was magnificent, a giant docking space for SS Helena. My heart began to beat more quickly, and I fingered the Nadsari amulet, asking Media inwardly, "What is this?" We crossed the steel slab of a platform to the boarding entrance of Helena. A knot came to my throat as the immensity of this dreadnought-class battleship towered over me. She was a regal ship, gray and gold and, in places, vibrant white. The captain brought me to where two guards checked our identification and verified our orders that I still was not clear on. I kept focused. The captain saluted me, and I saluted back, and the guards escorted me into the confines of the battleship. We walked through the narrow steel corridors, stepping into each doorway with bent head and with foot held high to clear the edges of the hatches. We came to a blue-carpeted hallway and then to a large, bright room where several officers in formal dress were speaking. Holographic maps of planet banks, specifically 3 cities on the planet, were shown. My escort was greeted by a colonel. "Corporal," he said, and he bid me to take a seat next to a man whose back was turned. I sat down, and as he turned, I was looking at Bren's face. He smiled richly and shook my hand. "What is this?" I whispered to him. "Try to pay attention. I'll catch you up later," he said. It was a planned attack, a surgical strike. 150 Danish soldiers were going to raid the 3 confirmed death camps on the surface of Banks. They were going to break through the blockade, and Helena was to be the leverage against Haktoin forces. An officer was speaking, addressing all attending. "Under stealth, Major Edgewood, Major Scott, Captain Phillips will drop troop transports here, here, and here. Once those troops have taken the camps, Helena will challenge the blockade and deploy lifeboats to rescue as many refugees as possible. Now, the timing must be perfect. When we set out, we are committed. Your teams must take these camps in 2 days, gentlemen. The quicker we are, the less likely we start a war." Everyone rose in excitement and applauded. I grinned and stood. Bren was beckoning me to follow him. Outside, I asked, "Bren, what are my new orders?" He laughed. "Come with me." We shuttled immediately back down to Bain through the clouds and set down on the pristine landing pad of House Edgewood. It was perfect, completely repaired. I laughed, imagining Medea was here to see it, to marvel at the newly installed stained glass. Several guards escorted us to the house, and the doors were opened for us. I was greeted by Harlan, who shook my hand and quickly escorted me to a large sitting room where Queen Gwendolen was seated. I bowed. She rose and put out her hands to take mine. "I'm so sorry, Jeshibian. You must think I'm an abysmal phony. I had not forgotten about you. I only learned that you were denied your room only this past week." "I, too, was out on the street, Auntie," Bren quipped. "Nephew, do not speak to the Queen like this," she said, coolly but affectionately. "Your Highness, I do apologize," Bren bowed. "Well, it seems that the Queen is more owned by a thing than she owns a thing, except, of course, credit or blame for all things in history. You are now looking at the fall of the Danish culture personified at your service. My house was completely taken over by these helpers." "Majesty, you've been more than helpful, and I'm not deserving," I said. She walked to me and placed an envelope in my hand. "I wanted to give this to you personally. Do open it," she said. Inside was a visa, approved by the Haktoin authorities. I was granted access to Banks. My hands trembled as I held the plastic card with hologram images trapped within it. Was this day real? I thanked the Queen again and again. "I know it is a pointless document, all things considered, but I had hoped that, as Queen of Bane, I could demand something worthwhile. Godspeed to you, Prince Khoorhrhani," she said, and I kissed her hand. Bren and I left the palace, Bren's pace almost breakneck. We crossed the front lawns and pressed quickly to the eastern landing pad. The clouds were thick, but the sun was piercing through them, creating the mood of an impending storm. "Where are we going now?" I asked. And Bren only hurried to the landing pad, now only a few yards away. A black, hulking hangar sat atop the black asphalt circle, surrounded by slim light towers against the glowing horizon. I heard Bren say, though not to me, "Okay, now go." I assumed he spoke into a comm link. He still pulled me forward, our feet pounding the hard pavement. He then halted and put an arm out, stopping me, as he looked with expectation at the side of the hangar. Something rolled out slowly, a profile, a slender nose widening to a thick, deep purple-colored hull. Giant engines beneath its wings. The craft was being rolled out on thin, hovering pads, floating effortlessly. Khoorlrhani. There was a crack of lightning against the blue and gold sky, and then it began to drizzle. Nearly completely out of the hangar, her lights were turned on, a line against the rounded sides of the hull, various red and blue indicators beneath the wings. I grinned as I watched the show. She was perfect, remodeled, retrofitted, and tricked out perfectly. I noted a new dark coat of paint and her name in 3 languages painted on it. With a crash of thunder, Kull was completely out and being rotated by the attendants of the hover pads. The ramp of her front end glowed by the crescent shape of the control room windows, and the 2 bright lights of the front end turned on, obscuring her from my vision. The rain began to pour, and then there was another bright flash, and more rolling thunder. The sky changed back and forth between hues of gray to amber, sunlight to stormy. "How's that for dramatic effect?" a voice called, and with my hand over my brow to see past the floodlights, I saw a man in overalls coming out of the hangar. It was red, covered in grease, wiping it from his hands with a cloth. He was looking back, walking backward as he took in his handiwork. He stood by me as I gawked, my mouth hanging open. "So," he nervously said, "what do you fucking think, man?" I fucking love it," I screamed, and I threw one arm around him. "Look at it!" "So, you don't mind I tricked her out a bit?" "No, red. She's gorgeous." Bran approached, and so my other arm went around his shoulder as we admired our new ship. Then we climbed inside, where Red showed me the now pristine interior. The starkness of metal offset by wooden panels here and there, knobs and handles of brass, a taste of Bane, of Jolel. There was a full engineering crew on board, many of them Joel's, and I shook their hands. I also shook the greasy hand of Red's brother, who helped him with his work. "We'll put a tension 3.0 engine in, totally illegal. Bren here will have to report us, huh? We'll have no trouble breaking back from the rift to join your people. No trouble penetrating that shield either when we're done with this little errand," Red said. "Red, how on earth did you get her back?" I asked, and there was a round of laughter among the Jolelians on board, one that hinted of a good story. "By God, I'm a bad man, Josh," he said, and I laughed. By the bits and pieces of the story randomly relived and praised in fits of laughter by his crew, I understood that once the Space Authority took possession of the ship and broke the atmosphere of Bane, Red and his crew of pirates took it from there. "I guess you figured a saint, Red," one crewman said. "Oh hey, I don't want you miserable bastards corrupting his perception of me with your yakking maws. I'm not that bad a man," Red shouted. His crew laughed. I was overwhelmed by all that was unfolding. I had but a small sense now that all was God's whim, and in my being I was only a bit more humble and reasonable, and yet she would still give me the world. Thank you, beloved, I said inwardly as I followed Red, Khoridian, and Bren up to the ladder of the control room. There, I was attacked. It was Ansa, hugging me, gripping me tightly and kissing my cheeks. She then showed me the operating systems. I left the trike AI in place, but I simply had to teach it Paen. "For us idiots," Red said. "Well, Josh, we've got to get her up and out, so," Bren said, motioning for me to take the pilot's chair. "Huh?" I said, worried about the heaviness of the Banish atmosphere because of the storm. With a confidence-inducing slap against my shoulder from Red, I took the seat. I looked outward at the lightning flashing over House Edgewood as the rain now came down in black sheets, and I turned on the main engines. Red sat beside me, everyone in the control room and in the lower decks strapped in. "Where to?" I asked Bren. "Orbital 3. Our team is waiting there." I pulled back on the heavy-handled bronze sliders, and Khoorlrhani rose with a growl to rival the thunder going on outside. Cloaked, we headed for Banks, a 3-week trip. Red's crew had left for Jolel. On the lower deck, we carried 4 troop transport vehicles and 35 special operations soldiers who were dropping into Banks. We could hear their riotous chatter and their flirting with Ansa as Bren and I played chess in the main cabin. Red watched and made snide remarks. Call slowed and we went into stealth mode, alerting us of our approach. We passed through the compromised shield undetected, flying the purple sky until we were over our target. With a shout from his comlink, Red heard the call to drop the Sting teams. He opened the cargo bay doors, and the 4 limber craft slipped from beneath Khoorlrhani and out into purple twilight. Earlier, the SS Helena reported that her cannons destroyed several missile arrays and threatened more damage. Caught completely off guard, the Hoktoin did not respond as the hundreds of lifeboats descended to the surface. It seemed to me like the Hoktoin were waiting for this day. They did not seem to resist. A red indicator on the dash showed a communique. Bren reached over Red and turned it on. It was the Queen of Bane, the Lady Gwendolyn Edgewood. "Ladies and gentlemen of Bane, of Jolel and our fallen outposts of Arcana, who are now safely back home, and to those in Banks, I know you are listening to me via the pirate networks, I say good evening. I come before you tonight to hopefully inspire you during this darkest time in all our histories. Our planets and our people have been ravaged by a seemingly unending and inescapable web of warfare, centuries old. A pattern beginning here among ourselves on Bane during ancient times and spilling outward during our new age to the sister worlds. That war has now returned to us in this great struggle against the Trican Empire. I do not pretend to know that we will prevail in this conflict, no. That is not my purpose this evening. Instead, I am here to tell you what will ensure our demise, what will be the leaden weights added to our spirits and cause our downward spiral to our blackest defeat. To turn our backs and not bear witness. To turn our backs on our brothers and sisters, on ourselves, will certainly cause such a downward spiral. A society built on the acceptance of anything unjust, untrue, or unkind can never communicate a true victory. I told a friend of mine many years ago that I felt Bane had been an awful sibling, a bully, and belligerent con artist to her sister, the planet Banks, whose people are respected and loved here on my world. Despite our alien cultures, we, the sister worlds, have together created the culture of the Banks Isathan. Everything that is loved and cherished about it, as well as everything that is despised about it. That culture is our culture, your culture, and it is our responsibility to maintain and grow this great interplanetary culture. The news of my sister's deeds brought me much, much regret. It has made my heart heavy with sleepless anxiety in hearing the countless lives of the religious forced to live in ghettos, cordoned off, stuffed in chambers and gassed alive and reduced to ashes by those who would call themselves a legitimate government. However, it is with unflinching bravery as people, humans in Haktoin and Odan and, yes, even Trike people, that we must bear witness and step into the light of truth. So, with that same unflinching bravery as Queen of Bane, I will say to you this. 4 weeks ago, the SS Helena challenged the Banks Isathan world, along with 4 more Banish military ships that have, through stealth, penetrated their blockade, the Iron Curtain, if you will. Banish strike teams have by force, a force warranted in the face of heartless treachery, liberated those and 4 of the confirmed death camps existing on planet Banks, these vile hells, and have successfully rescued untold numbers of innocent souls from their deaths. In spite of the systematic genocide that the Haktoin Sanhedrin has conducted over 7 ungodly years, the former ruler of this world, whose name I will not speak, not only silently stood by, but benefited from this slaughter. Let me be clear. This is not a declaration of war against the planet Banks. This is a necessary action taken against our sister, an intervention. This is the liberation of Banks. It is the liberation of Bane to bear witness, to stand up, and to change. We will now support the bond openly of the sister worlds as one in freedom. We support the free heart, the creative heart of its people and their varying differences. We will henceforth support love for one another. For without love of one another, there is only hell in our banal solitudes. So as newly crowned Queen of Bane, citizens of Bane, citizens of Banks, of the new moon, know that it does not come as an easy task to again commit forces against the spiritual capital planet of the Banks Isathan. But as I wear this crown, I understand and accept the necessary weight of its burden. And standing now before you all in this great House of Edgewood, a historical house of fighters, protectors of servants, who will not hide any longer, I declare the loss of 20 million innocent souls should never have been tolerated. Their cries across the gulf of space, going unanswered, should have never been tolerated. As your queen and leader of the new Banish order, I declare that Banish involvement in any such heinous acts will never, ever again be tolerated. Ladies and gentlemen of the Banks Isathan, I thank you I bid you good night. In the control room of the Hand of the Revolution, we were silent. Simply awesome, Ansa then said from behind me. I saw her wipe a tear from her eye and then lean into Bren, who held her. Well done. Well done indeed, Ansa went on, sniffing. Yeah, perfect, Red said. When the last lifeboat rocketed away to return to the SS Helena, the last machine gun shot, and the last compound cleared, that speech was transmitted with an almost prescient authority, with perfect timing and knowing we would not fail, to all listening channels. As I held the controls in my hands, it dawned on me that before me was the horizon of Planet Banks. My hands were sweating against the brass levers. All was quiet, even Red, and the unsaid question remained in the air. To enter the rift, all I would need to do was pull Khoorlrhani out of the atmosphere, orbit the planet, and slip through, while tension engines were engaged. In silence, I had to choose. My dreams of late haunted me, those of the Trican devastation occurring riftside, the fate of all Odan, of my brothers who still lived. My own sense of self-preservation began to rise too. I took a breath and was with Medea resting in her. And my hands moved the controls, setting the coordinates as I knew now, with every fiber of my being and deep to the marrow where Nihembrith was located. What's this? Red asked. Don't we need to be getting back to your home? I'm already home, Red, I said. I punched the thrusters and, with a boom, Medea's ship flew over the ocean at the speed of sound. We traveled for an hour as I watched the horizon like a falcon, noticed every arch as a signature, and finally reached a group of islands barely visible in dawn's early light. Kull was piloted expertly, and then I slowed her to almost a barely floating standstill. I no longer wore my Psi-Link, but I knew Kull could hear me, was listening. I relaxed my fear of her, trusted her, let go of the controls, and reached out to her. I dove, closing my eyes. Whoa, Red said. Let me give you... No, he's got it, Red, Bren said. With but a thought, I commanded the thrusters to be engaged, and I felt that I was flying as the ship, burning thrusters hard. I flew as a falcon, dancing over thermal updrafts, and then we hovered, and I dipped her front end dangerously low, swinging the ship around as if she were a small shuttle over the smallest of the three islands. Kull and I were not separate. She was my Mera. I spread my arms out, felt her engine to be my heart. I flashed the floodlights an intuited number of times, a signal pattern as if practiced in dream. Then I saw it, the reply, a light flashing back from below. It was the aviary. We found it. I flew Khoorlrhani over what at first appeared as only rocks, but I could see giant doors opening to grant landing access to the stone fortress below that was New Nihembrith. With the aviary doors fully open, I lowered Khoorlrhani inside. She was the perfect size, and we descended a straight path until the AI responded with thrust to set us down, easy, in the dimness of a cave. I then lowered the access ramp to open at the back and took a short breath, my heart beating wildly with anticipation. Medea's name was an unending song playing in my breast, reverberating loudly. I unstrapped myself and then quickly left the control room, descending the two ladders, then went down the ramp, exiting the ship, with the others starting up behind me. In the cave, I could hear the harsh sounds of ocean waves and seabirds, the dripping of water from above. I saw a cave entrance by the glow of torchlight, a small group of blue-skinned guards approaching. I ran toward them, and upon drawing near, in disregard of my own safety, threw myself to the floor before them, saying all that mattered. "Medea! Medea!" I begged. They did not know what to do, and not seeing me as a threat, held less to their weapons, spears and rifles. One squatted and stroked my head, beckoning me to rise. I did, and with my eyes averted, continued in my plea. "Medea." Tears streamed down my face. Another man approached from out of the shadows, slender in build, graceful in motion. I knew the face. It was Dalle, his calm demeanor recognizable. A slight grin presented itself on his face as he came forward, parting the guards, and placed his hands on my face. "Jesh?" he inquired. I nodded, and Dalle laughed deeply in his throat. "Ah, good. Good, come," he said, and he nodded to my companions to follow him through the corridors of the cave. Along our right, the walls were exposed, giant columns supporting a great opening to the ocean, and we could see the sun rising over the horizon. It was cold to me, and I was surprised how well the Natsade did, wearing only their slitted skirts and sandals. We went through many rooms, most of them large openings cut into the granite cliff sides. We passed many Natsade who, though obviously curious about us, tended to their tasks. Finally, we came to an impressive room. The granite floor and walls were carved and embossed with exquisite symbols, and in the middle of the room, on a platform, was a chaise lounge, blankets and cushions set on it. In the back end of the room, through another large columned opening, we could hear the sound of laughter. We heard a young girl at play. Dalle told us to remain where we were. I went to where the laughter was coming from as she disappeared around a corner. Then we heard a delightful sound, a voice I knew, mature sounding, but with an unmistakable sweet signature of youth. "Oh?" it said, and from around the corner came Dalle holding Medea's hand. They entered the room. She stopped a moment as Dalle came toward us, and she exhibited a shy demeanor at first, but I noticed she was smiling with overwhelming happiness. With Dolge's permission, I took hurried steps toward her. She covered her mouth with her hands, and then ran quickly over to me. She was grown now, seemingly in her late teens. She smiled, tilted her head, nodding, living joy. I burst inside, my throat tight with emotions, my eyes full of tears. Finally! She took my hands into hers, and she held them as she looked at me, her grin unconquerable, sweet innocence and great confidence in her. She looked me over, her mouth resting for quick moments from her great, enthusiastic smile. Her lips would relax and hide her small white incisors, only to burst into grin again. She then said in Khoorhani, "It took so many dreams, many, many dreams, to pull you to me." "What do you say, slippery one?" she asked, making a winding motion with her fist as if she were reeling in a fish. Dalle gasped upon hearing her speak as if she had broken silence after a number of years. I nodded and began to tremble, wanting to hold her. She put her head to my chest, leaned into me, and put an arm around my waist, and I embraced her warmly. She smelled like the wild ocean. Now from dreams you emerge. Here, finally. Good, good. I ask Aman, when will he come to me, do you think? Aman came around the corner, a large man wielding a heavy machine gun. He looked at me, nodded, his heavy demeanor never changing, even upon recognizing me. He was always serious, I knew. Holding my hand, Medea guided me around the fortress. The others were shown where to wait in a chamber near Medea's sitting room. A meal was being prepared for them. Exuberantly, Medea again showed me all of the rooms of Nihembrith, all the corridors and halls where she was kept safe, kept apart from the mainland. No one knew where she was and could only find her with open heart and willingness to love and to serve. And still, they could only be her devotee, done with their search for anything else. We sat outside, looking from the tall cliffs that dropped to the ocean. Aman was close by. Medea sat on the ledge and beckoned me to sit with her. I did, resting in her quiet, contemplative grace that radiated such overwhelming happiness. She said, "Choose me." I furrowed my brow, pretending not to know what she meant. "Choose me," she again said, lightly touching my hand. And so I surrendered. I released Sten, the hope of return, the clinging to her, the potential of a future, the place from which more adventures could be had. There was only this, a hand, opening while in the company of the purest, perfect, and bright master. That final moment, how can I explain it other than to say that she finally caught me, that slippery fish holding me against the wet, hot bank, and her divine hands, gills straining for water, and with that pure moment of no option, surrendering completely. Visions vied for attention, the Trikes with their army now focused intently on destroying us, Bane, having withdrawn, and now my idealistic hopes of a God-ordained return home to lead a holy war were smashed to bits. She raised my fantasies up, made them conscious, the vision of who I was in the marketplace of egos. She sang, "I am deeper than this." The bait of the demon snake, John D., was to sit at her table and take the fool's gold crown. I felt so utterly disappointed that God was not on my side. After all, there were no sides at all, and I was crumbling, disappearing, dying. Medea would not stop singing to me, and I dropped into her and accepted the destruction of the Khoorhani. I accepted it and no longer felt guilty. I no longer flip-flopped my silvery finned tail to break free and swim upstream into the river of possibility. Instead, the sun glared into my lidless eyes as the sensation of alien change again consumed me, though this time thoroughly, until death seemed a refreshing suggestion. I yearned to be that free, to be finally and completely held until she mercifully killed that anxious sense of me that kept me from her deeper waters. And in a flash of insight, I saw it all, her big cosmic picture, and the symbols all changed, intermixed. My heart was like shutters on a window that opened, drowning me with light. And Sten was like my body, a quaking mass, a cracking in its center as my throat was filled with magma from deep within as tectonic plates of my ribs shifted and split, and the precious stones that the bank's Isethine worlds and trikes drilled for, the trillions of tons of it, spilled deep within the mantle to be changed, made completely useless. The roots of the tree, the dream bridge to my master's feet, burned up with them. With that, the tension rift died as well, its purpose now exhausted. I was home already. No mission ahead. Medea brought me back to her heart, where it was revealed that separateness was unreality. Any journey based on it, suffering. And that revelation, that truth, burst my heart into sunlight as true identity, most rich, most pure. Her divine reality remained unharmed by the conceit of any singular point of view. 1,000,000 eyes times infinity, faster than light itself. So fast that stillness was the obvious impulse. Distraction made impossible. Home already, here, and death not real. Handed over, the journey no more. I was gladly dead to it. I only was with Medea now, my beloved, my guru now, a crew member aboard her divine ship. Overwhelmed, I could not help but in awe reflect on how she cracked open the heavens to create a way to her, how she attracted me and pulled me toward her. Washed up on her shores, spent of travel, I could only begin, humbly to know myself as is. I am Jeshibian. I am light. Already. I laughed. The joke was on me. Epilogue. Stand lost. Rift has collapsed. The bank's Isethine rift was reported to have collapsed by the space authorities of both Banks and Bane. Before the event, which occurred 2 days ago, transmission from Stenite colonies reported massive earthquakes, estimated at a magnitude of up to 12.0, occurring in the southern regions. Communications between Riftside and the bank's Isethine lasted for only 4 hours before the anomaly that created a wormhole exploited by both planets over 3 centuries ago ceased to be, trapping millions beyond its closed gates. More on page 2. For Santosha Ma, my beloved Guru, thank you, thank you, thank you.